Okay, we're in the book of Judges, and we're looking at Samson, one of the judges that God raised up. His story is really both amazing and tragic. It's really incredible story. It really doesn't show you a guy of just really impeccable character, uh, amazing figure in the Bible. And the question was, where does his strength come from? When we see pictures of Samson and in cartoon stuff, he's always this guy with all these big muscles, but probably not, because they were like, where do you get your strength? They didn't know. Well, we get a picture that in one place is in Judges 13, in verse 12, it says, and Manoah said, well, what happened is, once again, an angel appears to them, tells them they're going to have a son, Manoah and his wife, and the son is the one who's going to be Samson. And Manoah said, when your words come to pass, what shall be the boy's mode of life and his vocation? So how should we raise him? What's he going to do? So the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, let the woman pay attention to all that I said. She should not eat anything that comes from the vine, nor drink wine or strong drink, nor eat any unclean thing. Let her observe all that I have commanded. And so we see from Samson's very beginning, he was dedicated as what we'd call probably a Nazarite. We looked at Nazarite earlier in the scriptures. A vow, and they stayed away from strong drink and wine. And it was a dedication to the Lord. And even his mother was told to stay away from that when she was pregnant with him. And so Samson's born. He's quite a character. He wants to involve himself with a lot of women outside of Israel, and he does that. And that seems to be the downfall, as he marries and involves himself with women outside of Israel, outside of the covenant people. And the reason God didn't want that is because, once again, like we read through Judges and any other places, when they don't take care of those, when they don't separate themselves from those other cultures, they incorporate their gods and their practices, and that seems to be tragically the downfall of what happens with Samson. And after tragically being delivered by he was delivered by Delilah, his lover, to the Philistines. His eyes get gouged out. He destroys a house full of Philistines, though at his death, when he's in there and they're making sport of him, and they gouge out his eyes, and they just have him pulling, doing things, pulling. I forgot what it was, but anyway, he does different things, and they're just making sport of him, and he's just like a laughingstock of everything, and he cries out to God. He's been one who's had great strength, and he's destroyed many people. He's killed hundreds of people with a jawbone of a donkey, and he's done all these incredible acts. But now, once his eyes are gouged out and his hair is cut, which was his dedication to God, was his hair being uncut. That's where his strength came from, because that was a sign of his dedication to God. Delilah has his hair cut by these Philistines, and he's captured, and his eyes are gouged out. And his last cry is, "Oh God, give me strength one more time." Kind of be a deliverer of Israel from the suppression of these Philistines. So he's in this big house where they're having a gigantic party, and the leaders of the Philistines are there, and he asks a boy to help him find the columns of the house that are holding the place up, and he puts his hands against them, and with this one last feat of strength pushes them. It comes crashing down. The Philistine leaders are killed, but so is Samson. And so we see this, it's not really a pretty picture. The book of Judges isn't just really pretty. There's a lot of tragedy. There's the mercy that God has on the nation and on his people and on the certain tribes by raising up a deliverer. But these deliverers are just, sometimes they just carry an unction from God to do a certain thing. They're not really necessarily the most righteous or holy people. They're not Jesus in the flesh, that's for sure. But they are pictures and objects of God's strength and anointing that he uses to deliver his people. But the picture that we are, the summary of what we see in Judges is kind of in chapter 17, verse 6. In those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. And unfortunately, that's the picture of all of Judges, is that there's no outside ruler. There's no one to tell you not to do this and don't do this. But that was the idea when they came into the land. God's idea was, I want you to be governed by my word and by me personally, that you'd be governed from within, not from without. It was the idea even that was incorporated, this kind of idea was incorporated into the foundations of the American government, the American experiment, is our founders said that our Constitution wouldn't be good for a people unless they were a moral people. They were people that were governed from within. That's the whole picture of Judges here, is that God was hoping for a people that were governed from within. But what he finds out, there's no king in Israel, so people just do whatever they think is right. And they don't have a heart to follow God. Well, Judges wraps up with a really bizarre episode. It's about a Levite who's traveling through the land, and he's got a concubine with him. I mean, this isn't just a pretty picture of everything that goes on in life and the way we like to say it. The Bible just kind of tells it like it is. And he stays overnight in this place, and what happens is his concubine is attacked and raped and beaten, and she dies from the encounter that she has that night. She's raped and abused until she dies. And what he does, this Levite, is he cuts her in pieces and sends pieces of her all to the different tribes of Israel and say, look what Benjamin has done. Look what the tribe of Benjamin has done. And it's interesting, and you go to chapter 20, it says, then all the sons of Israel from Dan to Beersheba, including the land of Gilead, came out, and the congregation assembled as one man to the Lord at Mizpah. Once again, there's this unity, and the unity is a picture throughout this book and in several places in the scriptures. We saw it at the Tower of Babel. They were one, they were united as one, and God said they can do anything they set their heart to because they're united. They're one mind and one heart. And so here, one man, all the rest of the tribes come out. And you can see in this passage in verse 8, then all the people arose as one man, saying, not one of us will go to this tent, nor will any of us return to his house. But now this thing which we will do to Gibeah will go up against it by lot. So what they're saying here is they all came together to fight against Benjamin and defeat Benjamin for the horrible sin that they had done and this horrible thing they'd done in Israel. You see verse 11 again, thus all the men of Israel were gathered against the city, united as one man. This theme of unity is real prominent here, and where there is this unity, they're able to rid the evil out of their land. And so we see this several times in that book. Once again, to kind of fit in with the very beginning of the book of Judges, in verse 18 of chapter 20, now the sons of Israel rose, went up to Bethel, inquired of God, and said, who shall go up first for us to battle against the sons of Benjamin? Then the Lord said, Judah shall go up first. Once again, it's Judah. Begin our battle with praise. Start our battle with praise. And then in verse 48 of chapter 20, the men of Israel then turned back against the sons of Benjamin and struck them with the edge of the sword, both the entire city with the cattle and all that they found. They also set on fire all the cities they found. In chapter 21, now the men of Israel had sworn to Mizpah, saying, none of us shall give his daughter to Benjamin in marriage. So the people came to Bethel and sat before God until evening and lifted up their voices and wept bitterly. They were weeping because it looks like this is the end of the tribe of Benjamin. They're not going to give any of their daughters to any of the men that are left of Benjamin. And so what happens to fulfill and to save the tribe of Benjamin is there's another battle against Jabesh Gilead, and they destroy everyone in that city except women, the virgin women, and those virgin women are given as wives to the men of Benjamin, and Benjamin is saved as a tribe. Not actually the sweetest of stories all through the book of Judges. It's an intriguing book, but it's really down pretty gritty. And the tone of the book ends just the way we see the whole thing, not God's intention, but it shows the nature of man. Verse 24 of chapter 21, and the sons of Israel departed from there at that time, every man to his tribe and family. Each one of them went out from there to his inheritance. In those days there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And so it ends with this idea that, Israel is not united as a people under God at this point. They have the law of God. They've been commissioned. Joshua said, do what God says. Moses said, if you'll do this, things will go well with you. But they also said, you know what? We know you're not going to. There's going to come a time when you go against him. And so the idea was, you know, hopefully you wouldn't have to have an outside government. You wouldn't have to have an oppressive king. A totalitarian government tells you what to do. But if they didn't, it seems like they didn't know how to control themselves. They weren't able to operate under just God and His Word. So, picture of what's to come. Well, what would come later, a picture of this is kind of a contrast. One day there's one who would come who would only do the will of the Father. And He would be the true judge and the true redeemer and the true one who would set Israel free and all the peoples of the earth. You know, the picture of Jesus coming is that He would be one who's governed. He has only come to do the will of God. I've come to do your will. And so quite a contrast to the book of Judges, but in one way we see these rescuers raised up that are in one sense, you know, they're pictures of Jesus, because what happens is they come as the people, one, confess they've been in evil, cry out to God for help, and God has mercy on them and answers them by sending a judge.